A very warm welcome to Fireside Chats. I am Magela Pillai, and today I have in the studio with me an experienced meditator and practitioner of Rajyoga Meditation for a number of years, Sister Denise. Today we will be looking at the subject entitled Materialistic Soul. In this series, we look at a variety of subjects touching on spirituality. What does spirituality mean to you? Is there a balance between your inner and outer world? And is there something within you, the psyche, your spirit, that needs healing, be it a past trauma or any negative experience? We particularly focus on what your relationship is with God and how you can improve and deepen your understanding and connection with Him. Sister Denise, a very warm welcome to today's show.
Thank you.
A materialistic soul. Define that for us.
I think what's interesting is that generally you'd think that the soul is spiritual and then the rest is materialistic. But what I think we want to communicate today is that the soul itself can be either inclined towards spirituality or inclined towards materialism. So, of course, in the world of materialism, the existence of the soul is denied, but the one who is denying the existence of the soul is anyway the soul. Mm-hmm. So a materialistic soul is one who denies the existence of the self as a soul. But it's still, you know, the consciousness says, I am a thing, I am a body, all this. So materialism is something that exists within the soul. And so materialism is affecting the mind, the intelligence, the behavior, the experience, the inner and the outer experience is all affected by materialism, and what that means overall is something negative. And there's an interesting concept that exists in India. They say, or they use the same word for matter as they use for an evil spirit. And an evil spirit refers to a very negative emotion. So, for example, if somebody would be very angry, you'd say they're filled with the evil spirit of anger, as if it's some external thing. Actually, you are the angry person, but a soul who is oriented to materialism will come easily under these very negative emotions, and that is really not true to the essential self. So we need to deal with this phenomenon, because it's really one of the key reasons why there is human suffering.
If one has to use that as a point of departure, then materialism, or a materialistic attitude or vantage point view of oneself, is a false state of being.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what is the price that one pays for being false to oneself from such an elemental level?
Well, you can compare it to anyone who does wrong action, because wrong and false are also synonymous. So if you are being false to yourself, then you're doing actions which are false to yourself, and so the price you pay is in the form of suffering, you know.
Mr. Denise, how does one get to this stage of being so materialistic that you think that which you see and touch is all that there is? Is one born this way?
I think in a way, yes. The reasons are twofold. There's an internal reason, which is because when the soul is becoming more and more depleted, then you have to use physical energy instead of spiritual energy. You know what happens when you're tired? You also become irritable. and you don't have the same access to your spiritual qualities, and so you can make mistakes more easily. You slur your words. You may not be able to move your body around with the same amount of agility, and then there's also a consequence in terms of, you know, the fundamentals of how you interact. You won't be able to love, you won't be able to appreciate, you'll be short, you'll be accumulating actually negative karma because you're weak. The other reason is because of the messages you get. We live in a culture which is scientifically based, which is a materialistic culture, which says that if you can't see it and touch it and reproduce experiments on it, then it doesn't exist. So your education, the media, everything in the culture that reflects back to you will say you are a material object. And even I would say that the way in which many of the religious environments reflect back to you is in a more materialistic way than a spiritual way.
So if one has become like that, your way of being is totally attached to things. What does that do to one's consciousness by totally identifying with things and not with anything that's remotely spiritual?
Well, one of the things that happens is you get attached, you get identified, people, places and objects. Say, for example, something happens to a piece of property that you think is your own, then you say, it's happened to me. Whatever happens to mine happens to me. You think of your relatives as mine.
Sorry, can I interrupt you there? Whatever happens to something of yours, you think it happens to you. So, for example, if your very expensive car or your very cheap car is involved in an accident, you feel as if it's your limb that was hurt or damaged.
Yeah, you get very caught up in the whole thing, and it takes over your thinking and feeling, and it becomes everything, you see.
Okay.
You can't be detached from it, you can't let it go so easily. It's all caught up, and you invest an enormous amount of your sense of identity in the things for which you use the word mine. Even the way in which you relate to people that you consider to be yours. You know, they will say, you are my daughter, therefore this. You kind of remove any individual freedom from them. You deny that they have any rights. You treat them as if they are objects and your property, with the thought that you can do with them what you like and that you're not bound by any rules that have anything to do with their rights as individuals. You don't look at them as individuals.
Those things that we identify with will leave us, or we will leave it in a matter of time. What happens when there is the inevitable separation between you and the object of your affection, whether it's something or someone?
Well, it's an enormous emotional turmoil. There is this grieving, this crying, this just huge emotional upheaval that occurs with that separation, tremendous pain, as if a part of yourself was separated from another part of yourself. And a spiritually conscious soul wouldn't go through that, wouldn't have that, because their orientation is different, so what they are aligned with is different, and the the possessiveness. You know, possessiveness is a very powerful emotion, which is a very dark emotion, and so it you know, can take on this characteristic that you might associate with something really evil or an evil spirit. You see.
Essentially, such a human being is putting himself in great harm's way, is he not?
Well, I would say yes, they're exposing themselves to a lot of unnecessary suffering.
Even though the world has become what it has, there are scores of people who have a lot by way of material things. Okay, we're living in a world where a computer has become a must. Okay, a cell phone has become a must. Social networking has become a must, etc. So we have invested so much of ourselves in all of these things. How do you teach yourself in that context to see the wood from the trees?
There's a number of ways. You know, sometimes you can just turn off your cell phone, leave your computer in the office, and just walk away and see if the world would end if you spend a couple of days without all your equipment. And I think it's only then that you'd realize how much it has you in thrall and how much freedom you have when you actually say, okay, you know, for a few days or a day or two or whatever, I'm going to just put this away. Because I think that sometimes doing that allows you to reconnect with another part of yourself that is maybe a lot less materialistic and a lot closer to your heart.
If one has to re-establish one's identity when you realize the danger of being and functioning like this, what is your self-talk like? Okay. I once heard it said that you don't know the depth of your attachment to something and someone until you reach the moment of separation.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
Okay. I think that I own this tablet, not that it owns me, and I use it at free will. But if it goes missing, then I'll be spending the next week wondering where on earth I left it or lost it. So how do you use something and not become overly attached to it?
It requires attention because you don't kind of realize it sort of creeps up on you, and I think attachment is sometimes compared with a spider's web, where it kind of gets sticky, it gets a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So you feel that you can take it or leave it, but in the meantime you sort of invest stuff, or in your computer you put lots of information which, if it's lost, there's a huge complication, a huge inconvenience. And this is why people are so concerned about backups, you know, because the way modern life has become is we are really dependent on these things. I mean, everything about modern life is computerized. And if by any chance any of it goes down, then you find yourself very much in trouble. Okay, you use the things as modern life requires, but at the same time, I think it's very good to have sort of alternatives and backup somewhere else in your life, so that you actually give yourself opportunity to, okay, you work with it, but can you actually drop it? You know, and try it out a few times. Not that it's something that you just say, but you don't actually do.
The problem that most people have is that we have an illusion of permanence about the things and people in our lives, despite evidence to the contrary. You think that there will always be electricity, even though power cuts are common. You think if I lose the cell phone, I'll just get another one. you think that I'll just get the next tablet, the next computer, the next car, the next, the list is endless. We also have that same attitude towards people. Okay, we are aware that this one might die, might leave us, but yet we still invest almost all of our energy in them. What is it within us that causes us to lie to ourselves on such an obvious level?
We have to call it something like self-deception, because if we're aware of something but we act the opposite, then the question arises, are you really aware of it? And I think we'd have to say, you say you're aware of it, you believe you're aware of it, but the practical reality is you're demonstrating that you are not aware of it. That being aware of something means acting on it. You have to think about and prepare, okay, now if there isn't any of these things, how will I be? How will I operate,
So Denise, what is the opposite of being a materialistic soul? What's on the other end of the spectrum?
We would have to say a soul-conscious soul.
And define that for us in the context of materialism.
Well, a soul-conscious soul knows I am a soul, I have a body, rather than a materialistic soul which says I am a body, there isn't anything like a soul, you see. So it's a completely different mental orientation and a completely different relationship with the material world. The soul-conscious soul works with the material world and the world of the soul, so two worlds. The materialistic soul, there's only one world, there's only matter.
If you are what you call soul conscious, do you invest your energy differently, and if so, how?
The soul conscious soul is a bit more far-sighted. You think about accumulating energy, you think about resourcing yourself, you think about the cycles, the day, the month, the year, you think in terms of long time. You look at all your relationships and you see, they're here now, but you're always aware that a day will come when they're not there. And so you're just constantly coming back to yourself and being, in a sense, independent, and at the same time easily able to interact, to be engaged, involved, but to be able to let go at any moment, which is a very different thing from being caught up and consumed by these things that you think you are the consumer of. It's a kind of slavery, whereas the soul-conscious soul is much more free because of that awareness.
Somebody who is soul-conscious and who sees the difference between them and materialism, or being a materialistic individual, you are doing all of this work, you're making all of this internal preparation. What do you know that the rest of the world doesn't, and what are you preparing yourself for?
The rest of the world knows but doesn't know, knows but sort of acts as if doesn't know. You're denying that you are denying it. It is that. So what you know is anytime anything can suddenly not be there. Anytime I can die, the way my life is, it can finish any second. It happens to people. You go to your job and you get an announcement, okay, the company is folding your, that's it. And all of your, you have assumed that it's continuous, your mortgage payments, your car, very often you'll be living beyond your means. A lot of people who are into materialism live in a state of debt. And the financial circumstances, the financial system of the world that we are used to is very unstable, very fragile, but you operate as if it's always going to be there, even though you know that you shouldn't do that, but it's a kind of, so I say, a denial of that, and acting as if, well, knowing that it can't be, or it's too good to be true, but not paying attention to maybe your instincts. Maybe a person buys too much into the, the talk, the messages, the propaganda, the advertisements, or whatever it is, and just you just walk right into that trap.
Is your relationship with God different?
Yeah, it's very different.
Okay.
Because when you are a soul conscious soul, what you rely on is your relationship with God and your relationship with how you have put into practical reality all the different teachings that you have received about karma philosophy and so on and so forth. You see, if you put your life in the hands of God and you follow the instructions of God, then you've created a situation really where God is responsible. If you, on the other hand, you are in materialism, then you're going to rely on so many material things that are not going to be there. You're going to rely on that the same government will always be there, it won't change. The job will always be there, the house will always be there, the society that you're used to will always be that way, and anything happens which can take that out. In some places very recently there were massive storms which can happen just like that, and then everything is taken away, and then what? You are, really without any physical resources and without the spiritual support. You see, when you are relying on God and you're relying on your pure karma, then even if something in the form of a great obstacle or a greatly distressing situation happens, your ability to flex with it, to come out of it well, is substantially better because of being oriented towards the spiritual side.
There are many whose attitude is Mother Earth will always be there for us. What do you have to say to that?
I actually subscribe to that. The earth will always be there, but there is a great deal of instability. So since we're going through this period of climate change and unreliable circumstances, so you can't rely on the weather, the agriculture is going to be damaged, all these averages and so on that you rely on, they are going into extremes, and everything goes out of order when the earth stops being stable. So because your body is made of the elements of the earth, we really rely on the earth being that way. So while Mother Earth is always going to be there, I think, you have a karma with the earth, and if you have really taken care of the earth, on some level the earth will take care of you. You will have water to drink and wash in, you will have food to eat, you will have shelter, all of these things. I think it's very connected with your long-term karma with the earth. If you have abused the earth, wasted, it's as if, it's just not going to be there for you, and then when you really need it and it's not there, you're going to say, well, that's unfair. But it's not unfair when you look at it in the larger perspective and calculate, now, what did you do? How is it not fair? It is fair.
Okay. So Denise, this has been a riveting half an hour, and thank you so much for sharing. I think a lot of people will have to assess themselves and ask themselves, do I have spirituality in me, or am I far too materialistic, so much so that I'm a danger to myself? I think that is a question that you have left everyone with, and so thank you for that. So there you go. What does it mean to be a materialistic soul? The only person who can answer this very personal question for yourself is you. So I recommend that you literally stand in front of the mirror and ask yourself, am I materialistic? You can even ask yourself this question, grading yourself from a scale from 0 to 10. It may not be a 10, but it's a 5. And to the extent that there is deception, as Denise said, that is the extent to which you are potential danger to yourself, because you're inviting sorrow into your life. So a thanks to Denise for sharing her words of wisdom, and I thank you for joining us for this half hour. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you and goodbye.